Hey, all you BC Wrestle Pod nerds out there, and welcome to a special Valentine's Day edition of the Takedown Troop, your weekly TNA Wrestling review show here on the BC Wrestle Pod YouTube, Twitch, Conglomeration Network, Podcasting Syndicate. Thingamabob we got going on here. Don't adjust your dials. Yes, you're only seeing one of me. I am your host, Mikey, and I will be leading us in a more compact review of this week's TNA. My other co-host Will is currently out and about with his lover, significant other, if you will, on this Valentine's Day. So me being single as a Pringle decided, hey, you know what? The show must go on. And so I'm here to recap this week's TNA that took place on Thursday, February 13th. So first and foremost, to all the BC Wrestle Pod folks out there, happy Valentine's Day, whether you are in a relationship, whether you are single, or you have officially marked yourself as the it's complicated category. If you're not, because whether you're watching live or you're going to watch the replay, I have you covered in your wrestling stuff. But before I get into all the action that occurred in TNA and break down the segments and the matches themselves, a little bit of housekeeping before I begin. Of course, if you like what you see either on YouTube or Twitch and you wonder to yourself, what do these, hosts, this team of 10, yes, there's 10 of us that's cramped up around here, but I love it. What else do they do? Well, if you follow us on the social medias, which is Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, Blue Sky, we pretty much are on every social media site you could think of, except for Snapchat, because that's a little tricky. But you could check out some behind the scene footage. You can check out our report cards of all the weekly shows, the pay-per-views. We also do a little bit of previews where we show you what has been announced for some of the weekly shows the day of before they air live later in the evening or morning, depending on where you are in the world. And it's a lot of fun. Also, we have some merchandise. So if you want to, support us and, cop your favorite BC WrestlePod hoodie, t-shirt, long sleeve, sticker, mugs, if you will, link in the description below. But now that I've gotten all of that out of the way, let us get into this week's TNA, because this TNA was about two things for me: progressing storylines as we continue to build to the next pay-per-view for TNA, which is Sacrifice, happening in March. And this also marks the last and final match of Josh Alexander in TNA now that his contract is up. So we'll talk all about that as we get into it, but let us start with what kicked off the show this week after getting, our welcoming from our commentators, Tom Hannafan, and the drama king himself, Matthew Raywald. We opened up TNA this week with a TNA World Championship match, which saw our champion, Joe Hendry, taking on the challenger of Jake Something. Now, if you follow the internet, the wrestling dirt sheets, whatever your wrestling news outlet is, you might wonder to yourself, isn't Jake Something injured? And you would be correct. Now, for those of you who are new to TNA, what they end up doing is they do a lot of batch recordings. So they will tape like 2 or 3 episodes at these live tapings. So that way it gives us 2 to 3 weeks of content before they have to do the same thing again. So we are coming to the end of these batch tapings because this taping happened in Texas. So this is pretty much after Genesis and the taping from Genesis, the live tapings after Genesis. So we're getting all of this. And of course, their next live show will be Full Sail University, coming from live to us next week on Thursday. But I knew Jake wasn't going to win this championship. It is way too soon. I know Joe Hendry just recently won this championship. I will say that this match was a lot shorter than I thought it was. But overall, I still thought this was a pretty good match. I love that we're continuing to build Jake as this heel. I just hope he gets something more concrete. I know that we were pushing him and Alex Hammerstone, well, just Hammerstone in TNA now, into the tag title scene, but with Hammerstone out on injury, Jake has kind of been floating and being put in random multi-person matches, and he goes after Joe Hendry. But I digress. Again, Joe Hendry picks up the victory here. This is kind of a standard bout between these two, a lot shorter, as like I said. But the more interesting part is as Joe Hendry is celebrating in the ring, he gets interrupted by Ryan Nemeth, who confronts Joe Hendry after the match. I've said it before and I'll say it again. Ryan Nemeth annoys the heck out of me, but in a good way. He is that chicken S heel. He is going to be getting on your last nerve. He's just annoying. But that's the point. He is playing the little brother to Nick Nemeth, his older brother, in this whole situation. So Ryan Nemeth basically says that Nick deserves a rematch and that Joe Hendry is not a good person. The stuff that we've been hearing over the last couple of weeks since TNA Genesis, that Ryan Nemeth has a vendetta against Joe. So Jake something tries to, Nick Nemeth comes into the ring to kind of quell the things. Santino comes in. Jake shoves Joe to the floor and tries to take out Ryan Nemeth, but Nick Nemeth, hits a super kick, then a second one, and upon the third one, Jake Something moves out of the way, and Nick Nemeth accidentally catches Santino, our deputy of authority in TNA, with a super kick. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I wonder what's going to happen. Thankfully, we don't have to wait long because after this incident, we get a backstage segment where Santino is icing his jaw and Nick Nemeth comes out backstage and he, apologizes to Santino. He didn't do it on purpose. And Santino understands that him and Nick go way back from the independents to, their tenure in the other company together. But unfortunately, it would not be enough because Santino is the director of authority in TNA. So he's going to have to uphold the rules and regulations. So because of what Nick Nemeth did in the ring by super kicking Santino, Nick Nemeth is suspended for 4 weeks without pay. And as he understands, he walks out of the scene. Ryan Nemeth tells Nick that he's going to hold it down here on TNA for both of them. And that is how that segment ends. I'm quite curious that Nick is gone for 4 weeks. I do believe he might have other independent promotion dates, so that's why he is been written off for now. But I would not be surprised, and this is kind of thinking ahead, so fantasy booking here. I think that Ryan Nemeth is playing this annoying heel, but then he's going to be the one to end up orchestrating this whole thing. So that way he could get Nick out of the way, so he could get these opportunities, yada, 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 all that good stuff. I'm quite curious to see where we go with this story because initially, once Genesis was over, I thought that Joe Hendry and Nick Nemeth would be moving on from each other. I'm still hoping that is the case, but based on what we saw in this opening segment, and the backstage segment that happened after our first match, I'm a little nervous that we're going to keep telling this story. But with Nick Nemeth gone for the next 4 weeks, it might add a new dimension where Ryan Nemeth might actually win, face Joe or not. We'll see what happens with all of that. But overall, I thought this was a good opening match, and the segment that continued to tell the story of our main title picture is still pretty good. So I'm not going to complain. So after the backstage segment with the Nemeth brothers and Santino Marella, we do get into our next match of the evening, which features, the House of Elegance. So Ash by Elegance and Heather by Elegance are in action against a local tag team. So it is the House of Elegance versus the King Bees, which I love. It's fantastic. I love their ring gear. It was super fantastic. And of course, this was a good 7 to 8 minute enhancement slash squash match. The King Bees, they did great. I thought they were fantastic. They got a little bit of offense in, but ultimately the House of Elegance wins once again. And so as Ash and Heather are celebrating, they decide, you know what? I don't think the King Bees have gotten beat up enough. So they go and, attack them again, but they are saved by our current TNA Knockouts Tag Team Champions and Spitfire. So we are continuing to have this feud happen between Spitfire and the House of Elegance. I am super happy that we're continuing this feud because of two reasons. Number one, I'm glad that we are continuing this feud because I think that all four of these knockouts are fantastic in the ring. I think they have a lot of potential to have a really fun feud and a really fun story. So that's one part. But I think the second part is I'm glad that TNA is not just doing one and dones with the Knockouts tag team division because outside of these two, we really don't have any other Knockouts tag teams. So Masha is currently our TNA Knockouts World Champion, so Killer Kelly is out of commission for right now. I thought that TNA would sign the Hex of Allison Kay and, Marty Bell, but that's not the case. So I don't mind that the story is continuing. Spitfire was able to retain their championships at Genesis, but we'll see where the story goes between these two. I love that we're getting this feud still. I think it's fantastic. So after this, we get a couple of backstage segments before we get into our next match. So first, listen, I have been calling it since the beginning of 2025, but there are two people in TNA that I want TNA to build around in terms of their men's division with the various championships that we have. And the first one I'm going to talk about is who appeared in this promo, which is Mr. Leon Slater. So Leon Slater is backstage and he is approached by the Hardys. The Hardys thank Leon Slater for helping them out last week in their match against the System. Leon says that as a kid growing up in the UK, that watching the Hardys in TNA was his first introduction to them as a little boy in the UK, as I said, and it inspired him to wrestle. And Leon knew he wanted to be a wrestler at 9 years old when he saw the Hardys on television. And so the Hardys were flattered about this, and both Jeff and Matt told Leon that it meant the world teaming with him and that he has a lot of star quality and a lot of potential to become a big name in the wrestling business, which I love to death. The Hardys are towards the tail end of their career as wrestlers. I am happy that we get to see them in TNA, and I love the praise that they showed Leon Slater. Of course, I'm going to be biased in my assessment of this segment because I love Leon Slater with all my heart. But at 19 years old, I really think that in 2025, I would like to see Leon hold that X Division championship and have that division be built around him. He has been wanting to become the youngest X Division champion ever since that he could start wrestling. And I really hope in 2025, TNA will give Leon Slater the chance to be able to do so and run with it for a little bit. I love this. I love Ali. So he has his town hall meeting and he introduces his new cabinet, which once again sees the good hands of John Schuyler and Jason Hott rejoining Ali in his presidential cabinet. But now this time around, he has added a knockout in Miss Tasha Steeles. So I'm happy to see Tasha get some love. She is teamed up with Ali. I think this presidential cabinet with Ali has the potential to be a really fun faction. Tasha can go through the knockouts division. Schuyler and Hotch, the good hands, can go tag team. And of course, Ali can go for the main championship. So after introducing the cabinet, Ali begins to say that he himself and should be the number one contender. But then Tommy Dreamer appears and Ali begins to berate Tommy Dreamer, saying, "Oh, you showed up, so you qualified for all of this." Tommy Dreamer says that he's not the guy, his fighting days are over. But when he thinks of the new face of TNA, it is not Mustafa Ali. And he points over where the camera pans that Tommy Dreamer believes that the next face of the company is going to be Mike Santana. And in perfect comedic timing, Mike Santana, who's not paying attention, is on his phone, looks up and says, what'd you say? And so then we end the segment with Tasha Steele saying, okay, I think we're done. So what I love about this whole entire thing is that over the last couple weeks, we've been hinting that Ali and Mike Santana are going to be feuding to see who becomes the true face of TNA. I think Ali makes a perfect foil to Mike Santana. So Mike Santana returned back last year in 2024 during the Rebellion pay-per-view. He had a solid 2024 in TNA. having a feud with Macklin. But ultimately, his I Quit match at Genesis against Josh Alexander was a thing of beauty, ultimately making the Ultimate Weapon finally quit after he was about to curb stomp his teeth into the steel steps. If you have not watched that match, please, I highly recommend going back and watching that from this year's Genesis. That match was fantastic. I loved it. But Ali's current character as this heel, egotistical, presidential candidate, I think is a perfect foil for Mike Santana, who, for all intents and purposes, is a Brooklyn brawler. He's from the streets. He will whoop your butt up and down. But I think that somebody of Mike Santana's caliber and the character that he is presenting right now definitely needs a foil. And I think Ali is a good first opponent to have Mike feud with for the next 3 months or so before maybe potentially pushing Mike Santana to the world title picture scene or even the belt. I would love to see Joe Hendry and Mike Santana fight for the belt. I think that outside of Leon Slater, like I mentioned in the previous segment, I think Mike Santana should also be the other man that TNA builds the division around in 2025. And this is a pretty good men's division here in TNA. So I'm excited to see where this feud between Ali and Mike Santana goes. And I really hope that TNA is able to give us a different dimension to Ali's character while also providing something for Mike Santana to have to dig a little bit deeper than he has in his previous feuds in order to continue to build that trust and love that Mike has with the TNA audience. So after this, we technically get into our next match, which is scheduled to be Frankie Kazarian versus Sami Callihan. But before the match gets started, GCW's Mance Warner attacks Sami before the match and beats him down. Of course, Steph DeLander, the on-air partner plus actual partner of Mance Warner, romantically wise speaking, is out. She is our digital media champion, and so Mance begins to attack Sami. Frankie is declared the winner, but Sami gets up from the beatdown after Mance and Steph DeLander leave, and despite him being hurt and injured, he has this match. This match doesn't go for more than about 8 minutes. I think Frankie Kazarian and Sami Callihan had a fine match. I wasn't expecting to be like this blowout ultimate classic, but they're both vets in their own right, and they did really good. Ultimately, Frankie Kazarian would make Sami Callihan submit via the chicken wing, which has become Frankie's newest, submission move and the one that we're constantly seeing now. Post-match, we do get Mance Warner and Sami Callihan continue to fight in all of this. So I find it, again, I haven't gotten a chance to speak on it too much, but I really like the fact that Mance and Steph DeLander from, GCW wise. Well, Steph is more now, I feel like, in TNA, but I love seeing Mance be here in TNA and kind of have that GCW door open, so to speak, which I hope does lead to TNA and GCW working together and having more folks on here. I would love to see some of our GCW regulars like an Effie or a Jack Cartwheel, Marcus Mathers, men wise, and then maybe like Allie Catch when she's healed, Dark Sheik, like Megan. Well, I mean, Megan's in AEW now, so I don't think that's going to happen. But the point I'm trying to make here is that this is an interesting choice of TNA to bring in our former GCW world champion, Mance, to have this program with Sami. But I'm all here for it. And I love that Steph is now playing her heel persona that we normally get to see her in GCWB. And she gets to do it with her actual, partner in Mance Warner, which I love to see. The only question mark I have in this whole situation, which, given the fact that he has the call your shot gauntlet where he can call it his shot anytime. My biggest thing right now is where is the direction for Frankie Kazarian, where we're going? Because he was feuding with Leon Slater for the last 2 to 3 months. And then it seems we kind of dropped it because Frankie couldn't get, Leon to join him as his young boy, his yes boy, more likely. But it's kind of weird. So I am wondering where we go with Frankie. And I think that maybe, again, I don't work for TNA. This is just a speculation. But I feel that because he has the call your shot trophy where he could call a shot anytime, I'm not too worried of Frankie getting lost in the shuffle because he can literally come out and ruin someone's day by being added to a match or trying to after the match is over, having another one to take out the champion who's tired. But we'll see what happens with all of that. So after this, once again, we go backstage. Leon Slater is still chilling backstage, but this time he is interrupted by Mr. Johnny Dango Curtis, also known as JDC. So JDC confronts Leon Slater and tells Leon that, despite him winning with the Hardys last week, that the Hardys did all the work and that Leon is only here as a quote unquote clout chaser and only, getting notoriety and things of that nature by, working with the vets like the Hardys. And so Leon obviously does not take too kindly to that and doesn't buy JDC's, analysis. And he gets annoyed with JDC because JDC keeps calling him a kid. And Leon's like, hi, man, don't call me a kid, and gets frustrated, which ultimately ends up having Leon Slater challenge JDC to a no DQ match next Thursday on TNA. I'm really hoping that Leon wins this match. I think the system are going to interfere because it's no DQ, but I do think that Hardys do come out to even the odds for Leon Slater because of the previous promo we got earlier in the evening. I think the no DQ match is going to be a lot of fun. I'm really hoping Leon picks this win because I feel like TNA should capitalize on Leon Slater's momentum, get him a win, and potentially continue to push him into potentially becoming an X Division championship or put him in the X Division championship scene within the next month or two. So after that little segment, we get the announcement that TNA is bringing back Unbreakable after 10 years. For those of you who don't know your wrestling history, let me school you really quickly. TNA Unbreakable was a pay-per-view where at one of the Unbreakable events is where we got the iconic that a lot of wrestling fans, both TNA fans and non-TNA fans love, was the triple threat between AJ Styles, Christopher Daniels, and Samoa Joe. And it's going to be happening live Thursday, April 17th. So I'm just sitting here. Look, if anybody who has been here with BC WrestlePod over the last year or so, you might remember back in April of 2024, what we dubbed as WrestleMania Hell Week, where we did in this order, a watch along for review of night 2 of WrestleMania. So the fact that this pay-per-view is happening Thursday, which is 2 days before Stand and Deliver 2025 and WrestleMania 41, is kind of crazy. So TNA, I'm excited, but dang, you made our jobs harder because we have to do this. We have GCW, collective stuff. It's going to be a busy weekend, but I'm super excited to have the crew help me with this one. This one's going to be a lot of fun. So I'm excited because outside of Sacrifice, we know that, which the crazier thing too is that with Unbreakable happening on the 17th, we're also getting their next pay-per-view, Rebellion, 2 weeks later, Sunday, April 27th. So I think Unbreakable is going to be a good lead-in into Rebellion, which makes me super excited. I think this is going to be a lot of fun. So from here, we get into our next match of the evening, which sees NXT's Cora Jade finally taking on Xia Brookside. Now, Xia has not been medically clear over the last couple of weeks, but now she is ready to go thanks to her participation last week in the Knockouts Battle Royale to determine the number 1 contender to Masha's championship. And so these two have been feuding for the last month or two. And so now we finally get the match. I thought the match was pretty good. Obviously, Xia Brookside does have a lot more training, given the fact that she is a legacy child, as her dad is a wrestler. But it is also fun that she's wrestling a student of her dad's in Cora Jade. So this was a lot of fun. Ultimately, Cora Jade does pick up the victory, but not without Xia giving her a good fight in all of this. I love this. This was great. Cora continues to pick up momentum and wins in TNA, sorry. And I'm interested to see when we get the inevitable Cora Jade and Masha Slamovich match because we've been teasing that since Genesis. So this is going to be interesting. I don't have a lot much more to say. I thought this was a very solid match between the two of them. Xia Brookside is amazing for such a young age. I love her to death. And Cora Jade picking up a victory here as she continues to potentially build up to a title match against Masha has me super excited with all of this. So now we get an in-ring segment where we have Trey Miguel and Zachary Wentz of the Rascals come out to the ring to cut a promo talking about how they're sick and tired of NXT's Wes Lee and Tyson DuPont and Tyreek Igwe about getting involved in their matches and also, ruining their chances and sticking their nose in their business. Wes comes out and he basically calls out the Rascals for having the same shtick. And then Tyson and Tyreek get involved by saying that these are clowns. So then a brawl, everybody gets into the ring, a brawl breaks out. Obviously, Wes, Tyson, and Tyreek have a 3-on-2 advantage, but then Ace Austin comes out to even the odds. So the Rascals and Ace Austin brawl with our NXT crew before Wes, gets the Rascals with a double low blow and then hits the cardiac kick on Ace Austin. So we are building up to a trios match between these three with Wes, Tyson, and Tyreek taking on the Rascals and Ace Austin. I'm excited for this. This is going to be fun. And from this segment, we get a backstage segment with First Class, AJ Francis, and Casey Navarro. They basically cut a promo saying that it's time to give TNA, First Class an upgrade. So I don't know if that means we're going to add a member, if they're going to start recruiting people, but it has me super excited. We then get into our semi-main event of the evening, which is the TNA Knockouts World Championship, which sees our challenger, Savannah Evans, who won the Knockouts Battle Royale last week and earned an opportunity to face Masha, and taking on, the champion, Masha Slamovich. This was almost my match of the night. Obviously, the main event, spoiler alert, would be my match of the evening, but this was a close second. I was always wondering when Savannah was going to return, when she no longer was in the service of Tasha Steelz and with Jay Vidal leaving the company. I was afraid that TNA was not going to bring, continue to have Savannah be here. But I am so happy that Savannah Evans is here. And I thought she had a great showing against Masha Slamovich. Obviously, Masha is a very power and brawler type of fighter. And she had worked Savannah really well. Savannah looked really good in this match. Masha is a great dance partner. And you know what? With a little more time, I think Savannah could potentially not replace Jordan Grace or be that Jordan Grace, but TNA can definitely use her to be their power of the women's knockouts division since we don't have a lot of large statuesque women on here. With a little more time, I would eventually love to see, if we had a true Forbidden Door, I would love to see Savannah Evans versus Megan Bain, which I think would be fantastic. But I thought this was a really good match. It was very even. It was well paced. Masha Slamovich would pick up the victory here, and she retains her TNA Knockouts World Championship. Again, whether it's going to be on a regular show or if it's going to be at one of the pay-per-views, I still think we are going to see Cora Jade and Vivek collide. It's going to be fantastic. I think it's going to be a good one. I really love this TNA NXT crossover. I think it's allowing a lot of the NXT talent to work with some more established stars, and it gets eyes on TNA, which I'm never going to complain about because I want people to enjoy TNA as much as I do. Finally, we get into our main event of the evening, which sees Eric Young, who has now taken Sinner and Saint and the Northern Armory to make him a part of his little posse. So Eric Young takes on the walking weapon, Josh Alexander. This was my match of the night for two different reasons. Number one is the in-ring action. You have the future of professional wrestling in Josh Alexander, no longer a kid, well established, taking on a true vet of the industry and Eric Young, who has been in this business so the in-ring was fantastic. They know each other very well. They went to lengths that I was really happy to see, lots of more grounded mat work from Eric and Josh, the hard hits. These are two people who know each other very well. And it was really nice to see these two go at it. But ultimately, what pushed it over the edge for me as my match of the night was the fact that this is Josh Alexander's last match in TNA. I want to take the time to give a little personal story before I get into, my final thoughts about this match. Once I started watching and I became a fan of Impact Wrestling, I'm like, oh, I like Josh. And then fast forward to now, Josh has been on my screen for the last 4 years in TNA. And now this is his final match here. And, wherever he ends up going, I'm excited. So it makes me a little bit emotional because I've grown to love Josh over the 4 years that I've been watching Impact / TNA and become a fan of this locker room for both the men's and the knockouts division. And so it makes me a little emotional because Josh is now moving on. His contract has expired. Whether he decides to go to WWE, AEW, or any other promotion, I'm going to be following him with all my heart. So Josh Alexander's is not going to see this because we're not a big channel. But if somehow this clip or this video reaches Josh Alexander, I just want to say thank you so much for the 4 years of me being on my TNA television screen since I started watching. I have become such a big fan of yours. I love your wrestling style. I love the work that you did in TNA. So thank you. So my final thoughts on this match, again, the technical prowess of everything that occurred in the ring was fantastic. I thought both of Eric and Josh did really, really well. And of course, to no surprise, Eric Young does pick up the victory. He pins the walking weapon, and Josh Alexander laying on the mat as Eric Young and the Northern Armory go up the ramp to end TNA this week. A bit of a bittersweet one for this one. Again, Josh Alexander's contract is up. He is no longer with TNA. That his match against Eric Young was his final match. So I'm excited. TNA has gone through some changes over the last couple months with people like, Josh Alexander, Jordan Grace, people Mike Bailey no longer being a part, their contracts are up and going on to the next stage of their careers. But I'm excited to see where TNA goes with the people that we have here and the new stars that we have. My final thoughts for this week's TNA. I thought this was a really solid episode. On the report card, I gave it a B+. I thought the in-ring was a lot of action. We are progressing a lot of stories, which I love, but I'm still waiting for the big TV weekly moments that we got towards the tail end of 2025. But I'm excited to see the no DQ match with JDC and Leon Slater next week. We're going to have Mike Santana in action, which has me super excited. But yeah, TNA was really good this week. I'm sad that my co-host Will could not be here to review it with me. But do not worry, we will be back, both of us, next Friday to review another exciting episode of TNA. And to kind of close this out before I get into my goodbyes and my ending spiel, we do have some exciting things coming up into the works. Within the next couple of weeks, I will be announcing what we have decided to do for WrestleMania Hell Week. But we got some fun stuff coming up soon. Our first Progress Wrestling review will be happening next week. Of course, our WWE review is this Sunday, but Grand Slam Australia is happening tomorrow. So you tune into our AEW show next Tuesday to hear about all that. We got some exciting stuff here at BZ Wrestle Pod, and I love it. And I hope you stick around to check it out. So that's going to be it for us this week here at Takedown Troop. A bit of a shorter review, like I mentioned, but fear not, because Will and I will be back together as the dynamic duo to bring you another episode of TNA Wrestling next Friday. And check out our other shows here. We pretty much review everything. We cover WWE's on Sunday, AEW on Tuesday, NXT and CMLL on Wednesday, and we round out of the week with TNA. But it's not just the weekly shows. We do pay-per-view reviews. We do watch-along for some of these pay-per-views and whatever else we could think of. And of course, at the end of our month, we do our monthly podcast where we talk about anything and everything, because why not? It's wrestling. It's a lot of fun. But that is going to be it for us this week. So from myself, Will, and the rest of the BC Wrestle Pod family, remember, take care of yourself, love one another, stay iconic, and more importantly than anything, you always deserve to finish your story. We'll catch you later, well, this Sunday, for our WWE review, as well as everything going on next week. But until then, and we'll catch you later.
Thank you so much for tuning in to another Vibe Tribe production. What's going to happen next time? Well, you're going to have to tune in to find out. But until then, remember, take care of yourself, love one another, and as always, make sure that you keep the good times rolling. Thank you for being here, and we'll see you next time.